The mountain trail was quiet that morning. Soft sunlight filtered through tall pine trees. The wind moved gently across the branches, creating a calm whisper that echoed through the forest. Daniel Carter walked slowly along the narrow path. He carried an old hiking stick and a small backpack. His steps were careful but steady. At 65, Daniel moved slower than he once had, but the mountains still felt like home. For 32 years, Daniel had been a firefighter in the small town of Ridgewood. He had spent decades rushing toward danger while others ran away. Burning houses, car accidents, wildfires, Daniel had seen all of it. But 3 years ago, he retired. The town held a small ceremony. They gave him a plaque and shook his hand. Then life became quiet, too quiet. His wife, Margaret, had passed away 5 years earlier after a long illness. His son lived in another state with a busy job and a growing family. So Daniel filled his days with simple routines, morning coffee, short walks, and sometimes long hikes through the forest outside town. The mountains helped him breathe again. They reminded him that life could still be peaceful. That morning, the trail was nearly empty. Most hikers preferred weekends, but Daniel liked the silence of weekdays. He paused near a bend in the trail and looked out over the valley. The view stretched for miles. Golden sunlight touched the distant hills. Daniel smiled softly. Then he heard something. A voice, faint. At first he thought it was the wind, but then he heard it again, a woman's voice. "Hello?" Daniel turned his head. The sound came from down a narrow side trail. His firefighter instincts woke instantly. Even after retirement, some habits never disappear. He followed the sound carefully. Branches brushed against his jacket as he moved deeper into the trees. Then he saw her. A woman sat on a fallen log beside the trail. She looked exhausted. Her hiking boot was off, and her ankle was wrapped loosely with a torn piece of cloth. Her face was pale, but her eyes were alert. Daniel approached slowly so he wouldn't startle her. "You all right there?" he asked gently. The woman looked up, clearly relieved. "Oh, thank goodness," she said, her voice shaky. "I thought I might be stuck here all day." Daniel crouched beside her. "Looks like you twisted your ankle." She nodded. "I stepped on a loose rock about half a mile back." Daniel examined the swelling carefully. Years of emergency training had taught him how to recognize injuries. "It's not broken," he said calmly, "but it's definitely sprained." The woman sighed with relief. "I tried walking, but it hurts too much." Daniel opened his backpack. Inside were simple supplies he always carried, a small first aid kit, water, energy bars, old habits from years of rescue calls. He gently wrapped her ankle with a proper bandage. "There we go," he said. "That'll help stabilize it." She watched him with curiosity. "You've done this before," Daniel chuckled quietly. "Retired firefighter." Her eyebrows lifted. "That explains the calm." He helped her put her boot back on loosely. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated for just a moment. Then she said, "Emily." Daniel nodded. "Nice to meet you, Emily. I'm Daniel." The forest remained quiet around them. Birds chirped softly overhead. Emily looked down the long trail. "My car is parked at the lower lot," she said, "about 2 miles from here." Daniel thought for a moment. 2 miles was a long distance for someone with a sprained ankle, but leaving her alone wasn't an option. "I can help you down," he said, slow and steady. She looked surprised. "You'd walk all the way back just for me?" Daniel smiled. "That's what firefighters do, even retired ones." Emily laughed softly. "Well, I guess I'm lucky today." Daniel helped her stand. She leaned on his arm as they began the slow journey down the trail. Step by step, pause, step again. The path wound through tall trees and quiet hills. Along the way, they talked. Emily asked about his life. Daniel spoke about his years as a firefighter, the rescues, the long nights, the small victories when someone survived because the team arrived just in time. Emily listened carefully. "You must have saved a lot of people," she said. Daniel shrugged modestly. "It was never about being a hero." He paused before adding quietly, "It was about showing up when someone needed help." They continued walking slowly. At one point, Emily lost her balance slightly. Daniel caught her quickly. "Easy there," he said with a warm smile. She laughed again. "You really don't switch off the firefighter mode, do you?" "Not completely," he admitted. After nearly an hour, the trees began to thin. The parking area appeared in the distance. Emily exhaled with relief. "I was starting to think we'd never make it." Daniel helped her sit on a wooden bench near the lot. "Stay here a minute," he said. He walked over to the row of parked cars. Emily watched him carefully. Then something unusual happened. A black SUV rolled slowly into the parking area. Another vehicle followed behind it. Two men stepped out. Both wore dark suits. Daniel noticed immediately. Something about them felt official. They scanned the area quickly. Then one of them spotted Emily. He walked quickly toward her. "Ma'am," he said urgently. "We've been searching the trail for over an hour." Daniel stopped mid-step. Emily sighed. "I told you I'd be fine." The man looked relieved but also slightly frustrated. "We were worried when you didn't answer your phone." Daniel frowned slightly. He walked back toward the bench. "Friends of yours?" he asked. Emily gave him a small, thoughtful smile. "Something like that." The suited man looked at Daniel. His expression changed, respectful, almost cautious. "Sir, thank you for assisting her." Daniel shrugged. "Just helping someone off the trail." The second man approached now. He whispered something quietly to the first. Daniel noticed the way they spoke, professional, protective. Then Emily turned toward Daniel. Her expression had changed slightly. "Not distant, but more serious." "Daniel," she said gently, "there's something I should explain." Daniel waited. She took a slow breath. "My full name isn't Emily." Daniel tilted his head slightly. "It's actually Rebecca Lawson." The name felt familiar. Very familiar. Daniel's eyes widened slowly. Rebecca Lawson, that was the name of the state's governor. He stared at her for a moment. Then he laughed softly in disbelief. "You've got to be kidding." But the suited men stood quietly nearby. One of them nodded respectfully. Daniel blinked. "You're serious?" Rebecca smiled. "I like hiking alone sometimes, without attention." She gestured toward the men. "They stay nearby, but I asked them to give me space today." Daniel leaned back slightly on the bench. "Well," he said slowly, "that's definitely a first for me." Rebecca laughed. "You treated me exactly like any other hiker." Daniel shrugged. "That's because that's what you were." She looked at him thoughtfully. "You didn't ask who I was. No reason to. You didn't expect anything in return." Daniel shook his head. "Helping people isn't a transaction." The parking lot grew quiet again. Rebecca studied him carefully. "You know," she said slowly, "I've met a lot of people in politics." She paused, "but very few who act with simple kindness when no one is watching." Daniel felt slightly embarrassed. "It wasn't a big deal." Rebecca pointed gently at her bandaged ankle. "It was a very big deal." The suited men opened the SUV door. But Rebecca didn't stand yet. Instead, she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small card. She handed it to Daniel. "If you ever need anything, call this number." Daniel glanced at it. It was a direct office contact. He shook his head slightly. "I doubt I'll need it." Rebecca smiled. "Maybe not." Then she added softly, "But people like you deserve doors to open." Daniel placed the card carefully in his pocket. Well, Governor, it was nice meeting you. She stood slowly with the help of her security team. Before stepping into the SUV, she turned back. Daniel, yes. She smiled warmly. The state could use more firefighters like you. Daniel watched the vehicles drive away down the mountain road. Soon the parking lot became quiet again, just wind in the trees. Daniel sat alone on the bench for a moment. He chuckled quietly to himself. Well, Margaret, he whispered to the sky, that was a new one. Then he picked up his hiking stick and began walking back toward the trail, because sometimes the greatest stories happen on the quietest paths. And sometimes the person you help is far more important than you ever imagined. But to Daniel Carter, she was simply someone who needed help. And that was always enough.